Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Immigration Talk Show. I'm your host, Sam, and today we are here with another very exciting webinar that is lined up just for you today. So make sure to watch this session till the end, and you can also ask questions. That is the best part of our webinars, that you can participate by asking as many questions as possible. And with that, we are live on YouTube, available on LinkedIn, Facebook, X, and on Instagram as well. So check out us there, and also like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Our handle is at Immigration Talk Show. And before moving ahead, let me read out this very important disclaimer. By watching our videos, you agree and understand that the information shared by our experts and attorneys, including user comments and replies from users, is not a legal advice. So, use of information is at your own risk. All right, friends, after this very important disclaimer, once again, welcome back everyone to Immigration Talk Show. I'm your host, Sam. And today, the topic that we are going to talk about is another very important and very essential, especially for E2 visa applicants. And that is, what should investors know about the E2 visa changes in 2025? So, to help me in diving into this discussion and also to make this webinar a wonderful one, I have a very special guest who is joining us for the very first time in Immigration Talk Show, none other than attorney Jessica Weiss. But before inviting her to this webinar, I would also like to tell something about her. That attorney Jessica Weiss is a nationally recognized immigration lawyer with over 2 decades of experience and remarkable list of achievements. She was honored with the prestigious Immigration Services of the Year award from the Global Chamber for her outstanding achievements and exceptional services in the field. Jessica also serves as national mentor for the American Immigration Lawyers Association, guiding fellow immigration attorneys in the areas of adjustments of status and also on E2 visas. The great thing about her that she takes the time to understand each client's case in a very unique way, and she also guides them every step on the way. And whether it's coming to the US as a tourist, moving to a green card, or one day becoming a US citizen. So I'm really thrilled and honored to have a show with her. So, Jessica, thank you so much for being here. We are really honored, and we welcome you wholeheartedly to Immigration Talk Show for the very first time.
Thank you so much. That was quite an introduction. I very much appreciate that. And I can't explain it, but I love doing E2 visas. I've done them for more than 2 decades, and I really, really enjoy them because it's such a great way for people to come to this country. So I look forward to this show today with you.
Absolutely. I'm sure our viewers are really excited for this session, and that too, it's a very important topic. So, I think without any further ado, I would just like to know it from you, Jessica, that what our viewers would expect from today's webinar.
So I think what they can expect is a better understanding of where are we going with E2 visas. Is it going to be the same story as the last, what I mentioned to you a little bit earlier before we started the show was 1815 is when E2 visas started. That's over 200 years of E2 treaties. And do we think in the next year with President Trump in command of this country, is it going to change drastically? So I want you to understand, what are the changes? Will there be any changes? Or are we in for another several years of a great ride with E2s? And I think you'll get that from this presentation today, a much better understanding of that.
Absolutely. I think that's great. Our viewers are going to know a lot of things in today's webinar. So, Jessica, let's begin with our very first question. What should investors know about the E2 visa changes in 2025?
Okay, first thing is, I don't think there are going to be a lot of changes. I think we're in for a great ride. If you look at the last time that President Trump managed this country, we didn't have a lot of changes. In fact, we had 2 countries that were added to the list of E2 treating countries. We had Israel and New Zealand. And I think we're in for more countries may get added on, which is very exciting because there are so many countries that want to be part of this E2 treaty that we have process, and they're left out. I don't think every country like mainland China, I don't see that one happening so fast. It just depends on our relationship with a country and how much trade we have and how much we want to benefit each other's countries by allowing them to do this E2 treaty. So I think we're in for could be some more countries added. There are a few things that actually very recently something changed, that it used to be that you could have a waiver of your interview, let's say for an E2 visa, if you got it within 48 months of the last one. They just changed recently that it has to be within 12 months that you got your visa. that they will waive the next interview for an E2 visa. So a lot of people are out of luck now. So there are probably going to be way more E2 visa interviews, which also can slow the system down. So that's what's going to be that's happening right now. That just changed. In terms of if there's going to be a larger investment, like right now, substantial investment. We'll talk about what figure is substantial investment. I would say that figure is not going to change too much because that's the beauty of the E2, that it can be a small investment, could be $150,000, could be less even. I've done them smaller, could be $1 million E2. But I don't think that number is going to change so much. I do think that the Buy American, Hire American policy that Trump puts in place could affect some of the E2s. It could be that when you apply for an E2, they want to hear, tell me about all the American workers you're hiring, because we want American workers to get jobs. So the E2, if someone says, I'm going to hire a lot of foreign workers, non-immigrants, green card holders, but not a lot of American citizens, I'm keeping an eye on that to see where the Buy American, Hire American policies will go. And I also would say that scrutiny of the cases, I think there'll be plenty more scrutiny of the cases. Sometimes I'm shocked what they scrutinize over. One gentleman, we just refiled his case again. Why did they scrutinize it? They said, well, you never ran a dry cleaning business before, and you wanted a dry cleaning business to run in the United States. So I'm thinking, for an E2, you never have to have the exact experience in the business you're going to be buying, but you need to have, let's say, managerial experience or, some business background. Just depends, but it's never so precise. Exactly, this man said I didn't have dry cleaning experience, but I have management experience. So he refiled it because we were like, this is ridiculous, and he just got it approved today, actually. So he's really excited. So some more scrutiny could be out there, but we deal with it as it comes. If we know what the rules are, we push on the rules. We know what the regulations are for E2s. So that's some of the stuff I think coming, some more scrutiny, maybe some more E2 treaties, which could be exciting. More American workers they're going to look for in some of these companies. The visa waiver, the being exempt from the interview, that's basically taken away. Everyone's going to be interviewed for extensions, for renewals, for brand new E2s, all that. And yeah, so those are some of the changes that I could see coming.
All right. That's great. And I love the energy that you're putting up and, beginning our
I love
sessions.
this stuff. I don't know why.
Absolutely. I think everyone is loving, and that too, that's so great that you have put up so many different pointers, that too in very first answer. And I'm too getting a lot of questions in my mind, but I have to be very much particular about the topic. But with that, Jessica, I have just a random question from my side that you put
Sure.
up about trade and tariff from President Trump's administration. So, do you think that putting up tariff and trade, all these things may hamper the relationship between the two countries, majorly the US and the other one? Do you think they will have a hostile relation, or whether the relationship will increase and become better?
It's a very interesting time for that question because half of my clients are Canadian, and we see what's going on in Canada. Trump is taking a very tough approach, putting more tariffs, saying, look, we don't want to give you as free a ride as we gave you before, but there are neighbors. Mexico's our neighbor. And I still believe that we'll work this out somehow. But I do believe that it does factor in. I think because it's a treaty, an E2 treaty, the reason for it, the basis of it is because we have ongoing trade with another country. And we want to give our citizens and their citizens an opportunity to benefit, to build a business, to create jobs in the various, respective countries. So I still believe, I'm telling you, I've been doing this 27 years. It is a great way to come here. And even though there's tariffs and even though there'll be, more restrictions, I still think it's going to keep going because it benefits both countries. And it's all about, how can the U.S. get ahead? The U.S. has benefited so much by having all these E2 foreigners come here, create jobs for American, bring their capital here. That's all good stuff. For, to build an economy, that is all really good, what we want here. So I still think even with the tariffs, it's still going to be good. It's good news. I am so positive about E2s. I love them. Besides the fact I love them, I think it's just such a great way to come here. And it's not just for the investor, it's for the spouse too. It's the children. It gives everyone an opportunity to come here. So it creates a whole life for a family in this country.
Wow, that's great. All right, I'm sure E2 E2 visa applicants are really looking forward to this session, and they are going to have a lot of different information with this. So thank you so much, Jessica, for putting up those very important, pointers. As we are not having much changes, so I would like to know it generally that how is it going to affect foreign investors who are seeking to establish or expand businesses in the US?
So one thing you have with foreign investors is the currency. They have to see the currency. Like I've had clients, because I deal with a lot of clients from Canada, that say to me, well, I don't want to pull all my money out right away because of the currency difference. And right now our Canadian dollar is not as good as the American dollar. So they're slowed down a little bit of like, if they're going to do it, maybe they'll wait a little bit, see what happens with the economy or whatever. But overall, I think that the changes, because there's so few changes and because they still believe that America is a land of opportunity. I know it sounds cliche, but they still believe that they will keep coming. Even some of the changes that we see, like will there ever be a higher investment figure? They say substantial investment for an E2. They never give us what is the figure. So it's based on, they look at the whole picture. They want to see what does it cost to run this business. And years ago, I had a case of someone who invested $40,000 in an E2. It was a little one because I usually like them closer to 100, 150,000 investment. They invested 40,000. It was an administrative office. They would use their administrative office staff at different offices. They had very little overhead, and they only needed to invest $40,000 in cars and computers and advertising, attorney fees, and that was it. And it worked, and that was like all they had. So will they look at the investment number and say, well, 40,000 is so little, maybe we want it to be higher? They haven't changed that yet. It's still out there. Your investment can be little. We like it bigger because we want to show that gross sales are strong and their net income of the company is positive. So it's very hard to show that the workers are going to be paid minimum wage 40 hours, 35, 40 hours a week. We need two of them for the E2. It's hard to show that if you buy a company that's so tiny and the gross sales are so tiny. So they look at the whole picture, and they're going to look at the finances, and they maybe even scrutinize it a little bit more to see, do we want to bring this foreigner here? Are they really going to have a productive company? They also look at job creation. They look and see, so you committed to two full-time workers, which is required for an E2. How soon are you going to get them on board? I like the workers on board right at the beginning. Even if I get one full-time worker on board within a couple months, I got the next one on board. But I really like the workers on board. And then the documentation. I mean, I had a client once, they were from Pakistan, and they had to prove every bit of where that money came from to invest in the US company. Not only that all taxes were paid, but also where did it come from? So they had to show their bonuses, their paychecks. They had to go back to the very beginning, and we had to get a letter from the employer confirming exactly what they paid them. And that was pretty specific. I usually don't have to get that specific, but it's out there. I mean, we go back to the origins. We really want to know who gifted you that money. Where did the source come from? Years ago, a client said to me, I'm so happy I got money out and I put it in a bank account in Switzerland and I never had to pay taxes on it. And I said, that's ridiculous. I can't help you with an E2. You have to pay taxes on the money that you're going to use for the E2 business. So these are some of the little nuances that, we were going to look for, and they may look for more as these E2 cases, and they're becoming more popular because as other categories max out, like H-1B, some of the H-1B people say, well, I missed the lottery. Let me try to create a business. So the E2 system can get, there's still plenty of E2s available, but it definitely, I think it's going to get busier, actually.
All right. And also, I would like to know, Jessica, that how much money do investors need to invest to apply for an E2 visa? This is the most demanding questions that most of the investors ask.
Yes, it's a very good question because they don't have an answer out there. There's no specific answer. Substantial investment they look at. So you could have, like I said before, I had a business, $40,000, that's all they invested. I tell people to stay around $100 to $150,000. So what does that mean? Let's say you find a business that cost $80,000 to purchase. Well, that's not 100, 150,000, but there's so many other expenses that are involved in making that business happen. Attorney fees, travel expenses, maybe you buy a car, other fixtures, any renovations. So now we're getting it over the 100,000 mark. So the contract itself doesn't have to be exactly 100, 150,000. If you're creating a business from scratch, you're going to keep track on a spreadsheet. Every time you pay something, and you're going to show proof that you paid for it personally as the investor. And you're going to keep track of all that till you get to a substantial figure. But what is substantial? I would say, look, as close as you get again to 100,000. But I have clients that say, look, all I can do. One gentleman, he was creating a painting business. I have some great stories, by the way. I've been doing this a long time. But one gentleman, he was creating a painting business and he
Mhm.
hired two painters, only needed so much money for all the painting supplies, advertising, overhead, office location, whatever. And that was it. He said, I can't get higher than 60,000. That's all I have. That's all I need to run this business. Another gentleman, he bought two trucks. Each truck cost over $100,000. That got him to over $200,000 his investment. He bought two trucks, had two full-time truck drivers, and he had plenty of opportunities to use the trucks to bring products to different locations. He ran the business as an E2 investor, and that was it. So it just depends. What does it cost to run this business? And the other thing I'll just mention is that when you're going to buy a business versus creating one from scratch, you can create what's called an E2 contingency clause, where you say to the seller that the whole entire deal is contingent upon me getting an E2 visa or a change of status by immigration in the United States. And either way, so then you're not putting all your money down. All of a sudden, you're like, what? Why didn't my case work? You can, if it doesn't work, you get your money back because it was a contingency clause. The seller has to be willing to do that. And sometimes the seller wants a non-refundable deposit, a small amount, could be
Mhm.
5, 10,000 something, but it holds them for a few months while you're waiting for this case to get approved. And sometimes that's what the buyer needs because they're nervous. This is like, could be all their money that they've saved up and they're throwing it into a business and they don't even know if it's going to get approved or not. But
Mhm.
thank goodness I have a very, very good track record. I mean, I'm telling you, I do one E2 probably every week for the last 27 years. I'm always doing E2s. Always. And my track record is very, very good. In fact, one of my cases they use to educate their staff at the US Consulate in Toronto. So
Mhm.
that's pretty exciting. My client was like, they asked for permission to take that file and show it to the staff. I'm like, yeah, sure. Why not? So
That's lovely. That's lovely, of course. With that, Jessica, here's another very interesting question that most of our viewers are waiting for. That how do you see the future of E2 visa under the Trump administration?
I see it as great. I see it as great. I'm telling you, this is what Trump wants. He wants to bring in more capital into the country. He wants to create jobs for Americans. He wants industries to thrive. There's certain industries that are very popular with E2s, like salons are popular. I'm not saying Trump wants all the salons to thrive, but he wants certain, it definitely can build up different areas in our country. And it's a win-win. It's a win for everybody because there are people in countries they just can't wait to get out of there. They don't see a future for themselves. And coming here, it also doesn't take that long. And
Mhm.
E2 can be done either E2 visa at the consulate, which takes usually a few months, the whole process, or it can be done in the United States. If you come in as a visitor and you do a change of status, then
Mhm.
and you can expedite it. So you can get an answer very quickly in 15 calendar days. So it works. I see a great future.
All right, that's great. Most of our
Yeah,
viewers were really worried, the Trump administration, because we are going to
yeah,
hear a lot of executive orders nowadays. So they were really worried. But I think, as
yeah.
per your expertise, they shouldn't be, right?
Look, they can worry if they want, but that's what our job is as immigration lawyers. We hold their hand. We try to make the most successful case we possibly can. We look at the regulations, we look at what they have, we try to make it work, and then we give them the confidence they need to go to the interview or before we file the case, we make sure everything's there. And then that's it, we file. So we don't take cases that we think have a very difficult shot of working. I really want this to work for them because this is everything. Sometimes this client, it's all the money they have. And
Yeah.
we know that. We feel that. And we work with them on that. And I'm telling you, it's like immigration is a little bit like social work because you're dealing with somebody that this is everything to them. And I literally have clients say to me, do you understand? This is all my life savings. I had one gentleman tell me, my house burned down in this location, my house burned down in that location. This is all the money in the world I have, and everything I do, nothing ever works out. And I'm like, we're going to make this work because this is important to you. Yeah, that's how we do it.
That's lovely. I'm sure you are filled up with so much positive energy when any client comes to you, they are just quickly becoming so happy, right?
We
Just by
try. I'll tell them the truth too. If they show me how we do it, usually is a business broker gets involved. And a lot of times, if they want to buy an existing business, and I have to see the paperwork, I have to see, what are the gross sales, the net income, the employees, are they legal? And I tell them, look, so far things look good. Let's keep going. But if I start to see red flags right at the beginning, I tell them, do you really want to commit to something that's probably not going to work. Because you don't want to be going to that interview at the consulate and asking for a favor that, like, sorry, my case isn't fit so well, but please, please give this to me. We want to have a solid case when we go. And then they don't have to be so worried about, oh, what Trump going to do, whatever. But we always ask them right from the beginning, is there something in your background that prevent you from getting an E-2 visa? Because they do. We have to know anything criminal, any, bunch of DUIs, we have to know. So we don't get to that point where they need a waiver at the interview and we're like, why didn't you tell us that you smoked marijuana and were arrested for it and it's in your record? Like, we need to know these things up front.
All right. Okay,
Yeah.
that's great. And here's another question, Jessica, about the key requirements. So, what are the key requirements for obtaining an E2 visa, and how can investors ensure that they meet these criteria?
Okay, so key requirements are: number one, substantial investment. Okay, we discussed it a little bit. 150,000 roughly, can be less, can be more, but substantial investment. It could be gifted to you. It could be your parents want you to have this opportunity to come to this country and they gift you $200,000, but it has to be a gift. It cannot be a loan. So substantial investment, you want to make sure you hit that around that range. You have to play an active role. So if years ago a gentleman said to me, I bought a gym, it's a 24-hour gym, everyone just goes in with their key and I don't have to do anything. I said, that is not a need. You have to be there to run it on a regular basis. You don't have to be there 9 to 5, but you have to be there regularly and know what's going on with your business. Also, you want to buy something that you're not hiring your whole family. So I have clients to say, if I'm going to invest in an E2, I'm going to bring over my sister, my aunt, and everybody. I'm like, that's not going to work for an E2. You have to create jobs for people other than your family. So there's something out there called marginality. And if they deny your case because of marginality, it's because they feel that you do not make enough gross sales to cover the expenses to run the business properly. And they call it marginality, and you don't want that. You also have to have intent to depart. So I had a client once went to an interview and said, yeah, I sold everything off, my house, my business, and everything, and I'm just waiting for my E2 to get approved. And I told him, you don't do that. You have to always show in the interview at the consulate that you have intent to return to your home country, that you have something to come back to. So it's important that you have that too. So these, and also that all taxes are paid and the money was received legally. That's another thing. I usually don't have this issue, but if you got it through drug sale or something, terrorism or something crazy, like, it's going to be a problem. We have to know really the legit source of that money. And then a strong business plan is key to these cases. They want to see over a period of time, over 6 months, 1, 3, and 5 years. They want to see, how are you going to build this business up? Who are you going to hire? What are your gross sales going to be? And we do strong comparative market analysis in the business plan to show similar businesses and how yours is going to thrive like theirs. And we put all that together, and usually it's several hundred pages, and then we have to shrink it. If you file with the consulate, you have to shrink it to the amount of pages they require. And for example, Canada is 50 pages. So my clients are going to be like 200 pages, and I have to spend time just shrinking the case to like 50 critical pages. And then the rest they bring with them to the interview. So those are the keys. And when you hit them, that's it. You hit these requirements, you can have a great case. I also want to share, though, sometimes you see a case and it has potential to be a great case, but it's not a great case, meaning like the numbers aren't so great, but you're going to build it up. So immigration says, show us in a strong business plan. We want to see how you're going to build it up. So if your gross sales are good, but you have a negative net income, even if it's 10,000, 100,000 gets harder to justify. But let's say there's a lot of deductions on the tax returns or whatever. If we can explain what happened, what went wrong, and this is how you're going to turn it around, sometimes those cases can work nicely too. So I wouldn't say every case has to be really strong net income, really amazing gross sales. We look at each and see, can we turn this into an E2?
All right, that's great.
Yeah.
Also, here another question, Jessica, that have there been modification to the minimum investment amounts or the types of investments considered eligible for the E2 visa?
So there hasn't been changes to the minimum investment amount, but the types of investments considered eligible for an E2, I would say now with a lot of remote work taking place, they've opened up themselves a little bit more E2s to some more remote, like remote offices, but you still have to justify, why do you need to come to this country? So if you have a business that all runs remote, like it's a sales business, you sell a product online, maybe you have a factory in the US, and maybe we could show how you have to check on it regularly or something like that. But when they come to me and they say everything's remote and I just need, workers in this state and another one in that state, and I'm like, it doesn't work so well. Like I had a woman years ago that she had a facility in California that made facial products and for skin and stuff, but her headquarters were in New York. But I explained that she has to go back and forth, and she really lived in New York, but most of the activity of her business was California. But we explained she had to go back and forth regularly, so she needed to be in the United States. But with so much remote work, people try to say, well, it's just all remote. And I'm like, you got to create a little bit that's not remote to work for an E2. But other than that, the types of investments, well, the thing is, people always call me up and say, I bought a house and I want to flip it. And I'm like, E2s, you flipping houses does not work for E2s, but let's get creative. There are ways to do things with the house, a house business. For example, you could have joint like apartment complexes, several of them, and say, look, I need to hire a manager, renovation person, et cetera, and turn it into an active business. When you buy one house and you flip it, it's not active. They don't like that. But there are a lot of ways to. I had one lady who she would buy the houses, she would create financial mechanisms for people to live in the houses, and then eventually they would buy the houses from her. So her business was the financial part of it. And that was the active part, even though she owned all the houses. But you can't just, one guy's like, I'll buy a house, that's my business. I'm taking care of the house. I'm like, no, that does not work for any two. It still doesn't work for any two. So
All right. Okay, that's really interesting. Also, Jessica, why is the E2 visa country specific? We know it's obviously a country specific, so we
yeah.
want to know the reason. And why is it available to citizens all countries like other visa types?
So the beauty of the E2 is we say to another country, you have so much trade and interaction with us at a business level. We want to continue that. And this is another way of continuing that by having E2 treaty that we have, and they have something similar in their country. For example, the country of Israel, we didn't have it for so long, and now we have it because there's a mutual agreement that they have an equivalent that if our American citizens want to go there and build businesses and
Mhm.
hire workers, whatever, they have something equivalent to our E2. So that is why, because we have these ongoing relationships, and this just continues that relationship. But there are certain countries we don't have relationships with, like Iran. We have no relationship, no E2 with Iran, but there are other countries that who knows what'll happen maybe that will get it. I mean, New Zealand just came on board a few years ago, and there's a lot of talk about Greenland. We don't know what's going to happen with that. There are countries out there that are very interested in this relationship. So, but it's not with every country. That is true. And as I mentioned a little bit earlier, that it's very interesting the date that the treaty started can be 1850s, can be early 1900s. These relationships have gone on for a long, long time. So that's another reason why I don't think they're just going to go like that. There are changes that have come between the agreements that we have with countries, like France originally had an E2 visa, it was a 5-year one. Then they took it away and made it a 2-year visa they issue. Now we're back to 4 years. So sometimes the agreements that we have for the E2, there are adjustments that come about, but they give a lot of notice if it's going to happen usually.
All right.
So,
But Jessica, talking about the country's relationship, if we specifically talk about India, then India doesn't count in the E2 visa, right? But
right.
similarly, we have seen President Trump and Prime Minister Modi, they are having a very good relation. And not too in the second term, but also during the first term also. So, is there any chance that India can also count under the list of E2 visa, maybe after having good relations? Or what's your call?
Right. This is a good point that you make. The issue also becomes there are certain countries that the population is huge, like mainland China, India. If you look at the visa bulletin, where they're seeing, the certain amount that we issue of green cards to certain countries like Vietnam, India, Mexico, there are so many people wanting to come here. But I think there are a lot of factors that play into which countries we have the E2 treaty with, and I think India would be flooded with candidates if E2 visa came about. This is just my own personal thinking of this, or mainland China, we would be flooded with them. So
Mhm.
part of it is the ongoing relationship we have. And part of it is we have to look at the numbers. What would this do to our country if we open the doors to certain very large countries? Look, we do have it with Mexico. Right, we have an E2 treaty with Mexico. That was a long time ago. It was established. We our relations are tenuous right now with the border and all the issues there, but it hasn't really been talked about that we would get rid of it. So there's probably a lot of factors that go into why do we have an E2 treaty. I'm only mentioning a few, but there could be behind the scenes things like, for example, with Israel, there was a lot of visa waiver overstays.
Yeah.
So that was delaying it. They were like, Israelis need to stop overstaying on their visas. They respect our laws. And then, they were working out all the little details. So I don't know
Mhm.
what ones are in the on the burner, so to speak, right now. But I'm hopeful that there will be more countries that we do have it with.
Absolutely, because nowadays we are seeing that we don't know whether the relationship are being very friendly or not with USA, but at least with India, we
Hmm.
have been seeing a better relation, and as compared to Mexico, Canada, the other countries who have the E2 treaty. So
I
I think let's hope, and if you are saying, then I'm sure our viewers would be hopeful, and they should also be positive about it because most of our viewers are really looking forward to the E2 visa. So
hear you, and I love the E2 visa. I don't care what country it's from. I'm happy to help any country. I've done some very interesting countries E2s, and all the requirements are very similar. Usually, all the countries except for the UK. UK requires that you have physically lived in that country for 1 year before you file for your E2. Yep. And
uh,
now it looks like Grenada and Portugal. These two countries, there's a way to become a citizen, and then you have to wait a certain amount. If you got it through a financial investment and you became a citizen, you have to wait a certain amount of time before you can apply for the E2. It's sometimes a 2 year waiting period or a 3 year waiting period. But that's another path in. If certain countries do not have E2 visa and you become a citizen of these countries, within a matter of a few years, you can apply for the E2. That's what some people do if they don't have a country that has E2 treaty. It's an unusual way to do it. You want to be a citizen of those countries, then go for it. You know,
All right, that's great, and I'm loving that. But Jessica, I really don't want to take a break, but I think it's almost 30 minutes, and we didn't
oh,
even realize that. So, friends, we are just taking a short break. That will be 2 to 3 minutes break, not more than that. So don't worry, we are not going to keep your wait for long. But till then, you keep on posting questions, keep on commenting, and ask as many questions as possible. And we are here definitely, and we will try our best to ask and as I mean to answer all the questions as possible. Till then, you can also look for the contact detail of our today's attorney, attorney Jessica Weiss. The contact number is 888 and the email ID is jessicaw@waysIPlaw.com, and the website is www.attorneyjessicaways.com. So please go ahead, and you can also contact her, and you can let her know about your immigration journey, about your concern, what process you are going through, or what complexities you have. And I'm sure she is going to give you the best advice. So, with that, friends, don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. So, keep watching Immigration Talk Show. Hello, everyone, and welcome back once again to Immigration Talk Show. And now we are going to have a second segment of this episode. Till now, we have been going through a great discussion with none other than, I would say, wonderful and great attorney Jessica Weiss. And today, the topic that we are discussing is very important. What should investors know about the E-2 visa changes in 2025? So till now, we have gone through a lots of information. What will be the future under Trump's administration? Then, what are the key requirements? How the investor should invest? What are the key pointers? And also about minimum money. So till now, we have gone through a lots of information, and now I think let's pick up our viewers' question. But with that, Jessica, before diving into our comments, I would just like to ask one more question because I think that is very important to answer. And that is, what are some common problems that investors face when they apply for the E2 visa?
Okay, so some of the common problems I would say is that the investment amount is too small. You have to watch that. That they don't have the hired workers properly. So, meaning like if they have one full time worker, they don't have any plans to hire another worker. That's a problem. That there needs to be a role for them and need to clearly have a role, and it cannot be hands on. So, if you own an ice cream shop and you say, I'm going to be scooping the ice cream at the interview, that's a problem. They have to understand they are CEO, they're overseeing the operations, and they have to make that clear. In terms of I would say during due diligence, the whole due diligence process while they're buying an existing business, a lot of them don't have the financial background. So they rely on a business lawyer to help them understand, but they have to make sure it's a legit company they're buying. On paper, everything can look legit. Some of my clients literally like park their car outside the business and see what the foot traffic is like and stuff. Because this is something I always tell them, buy a business you like and buy a business that you think is going to last, because we need this to last. Because as long as you're here in your E2, you've got to keep your business going. And they joke around, people say that E2 is like the retirement visa, because you could buy it, you could be 70, 80 years old, and you could buy an E2 business, but you know what? You still have to take care of it. But a 70-year-old can check on their business on a regular basis, and they do. And so it is like the retirement kind of E2 business, because snowbirds want to come here and eventually they love it here. And so I'm in Florida, so snowbirds. So eventually they love it here and they're like, how can we stay here longer? So that's my business, and they run it, for the rest of their lives, or they turn it into, they find it somehow switching into a green card. And I know we didn't talk about that really too much, but there are ways to go from E2 to green card and not just EB5. I do that. A lot of my clients, we go other ways to come here. It is possible. And I get that question a lot. Like, okay, now I'm here on an E2. How do I stay here long term? And I tell them, as soon as you get in here, let's talk, because let's set it up the right way so you can have, a long, long time in this country. So,
All right. Okay. So I think we have come across with lots of questions. And
great.
I can see, Jessica, we got really a great amount of engagement here. Vihan, Trizer, then Arpita, Vihan. I'm really confused whom to take first, but let's take up Vihan's question. Vihan is here asking, looking ahead to 2025, which industries or business sectors do you believe will be the most attractive for E2 visa investors, considering the potential changes? Yeah.
Restaurants are coming back. During COVID, it was very difficult. E2 companies really suffered, but they're back. Restaurants are back, salons are back. A lot of the services that people need to go into to get those services, they're all coming back. I find even a simple coffee shop does very well for an E2. You have two workers, a certain amount of income coming in. So that whole industry, restaurants, I think is very nice for an E2 and can slide you sometimes very nicely into an EB5 too, a green card. I would say other areas, I think real estate will come back, not flipping houses, but could be all sorts of things related to real estate. It could be property management companies. It could be any kind of renovation business, like window wiping business. All those areas that are related to real estate can come back too nicely. And it could be something completely like, who would think like a dog grooming business? Well, there's never a shortage of dogs. So those kind of like narrow, even newspaper, like, I don't know, some people have newspaper routes and stuff, and that like we get creative. The point is like there are certain industries that, yes, I think will be more popular now because now that COVID's long gone, they will be better. But we don't care what industry it is. Like we'll try to help you. If you have a dream, I always tell people, if you have a dream and you want to make a business in the United States or buy, let's help you, because I want you to buy something you like. I have clients call me up, they're desperate, just find me anything, whatever. I'm like, no, you really should find something you like because you're going to spend your time building it. So,
Absolutely, that's very well said. Thank you so much, Jessica, for putting up this very interesting, I would say, information. And Vihan also, thank you so much for putting up this question. In case if you have any follow-up question or would like to know more from Jessica, then please go ahead and ask those questions. Santosh is here, and Santosh is asking, are there any expected changes to the process for renewing or extending an E2 visa? For example, will there be more leniency or stricter evaluation process after 2025? Yeah.
so there's two ways, as you can see here, renewing or extending, you said. If you do what's called a renewal of your E2 in the United States, you get 2 years to stay here. Those cases, I believe, are scrutinized more, and you don't get a chance for an interview. But there are situations where people just want to renew here and they don't want to go to a consulate to get another E2 visa. So when you have that, they're going to scrutinize them, and they could scrutinize them more, meaning they're going to look at, tell me about your gross sales. Let me see your tax returns the last few years. Were they
Mhm.
positive? Do you have a positive net income? Do you have two full-time employees? Did you have a gap and you didn't have two full-time employees? Why do you have a gap? So these things are going to get scrutinized, I believe, more if you do it as a renewal in the United States. In terms of going to a consulate, again, it's so based on what officer is interviewing you, right? So you could have an officer that knows their stuff and knows exactly what to ask you, and one that's clueless, and you're just like, why are they asking me this? My attorney prepared me, and it makes no sense, but they have the power. So they have the
Mhm.
power. They can ask you whatever within the requirements of an E2 to evaluate it for the strength of it. But I think the E2 visa interview is your chance to address any
Mhm.
questions, any concerns they have. And I think, will they scrutinize it more? I would say the general trend is right now that everything's getting scrutinized more, but I don't see it to the point that it makes it so difficult. E2 visas overall, it's very, it could be 80,
Mhm.
90%, like a huge number get approved. It's a very high number of the approval rate for E2 visas because we don't file them unless we think you have a very good shot at it. We're not going to waste everybody's time and everybody's
Mhm.
money. So that's where I see. Will there be more leniency? I don't see leniency. No, I don't think we're going in that direction. But I don't see it's an impossible situation. But I do think consulate processing
Mhm.
still is a little bit easier than doing a chain extension of status in the US.
All right, all right. Okay. Thank you so much, Santosh, for putting that question out. And let's move ahead with Ananya's comment. Hi, Ananya. Thank you so much for being here and participating. Ananya is asking, with the potential changes in the E2 visa policy in 2025, do you anticipate that there will be variations in eligibility for investors from certain countries?
Hmm. So, as I work mostly with Canadians, or at least half my clients are Canadian, when I saw in the news all the things with the tariffs and restrictions, and I thought, oh, I wonder if they'd stop their treaty. I
Mhm.
still think they're very close, and I don't see that happening. I mean, don't quote me, whatever. But where do I anticipate any variations or changes? It's really the regulations are codified and there's certain set criteria. So if a consulate wants to be more specific, like the UK is like, okay, we have a 1 year physical presence requirement in the country, consulates can do that. But the overall requirements, I don't see. I don't see that there's going to be a lot of variation. Even in countries, I've done E2s in so many different countries. It's the same criteria and it hasn't changed. I could just see maybe like what happened in France. Like a country says, no, we don't want 5 year visa anymore, with America. So they change that. So some of the terms of the agreements, the amount of visa, also the filing fees can change. They could increase them. You could have a larger filing fee when you apply for an E2 visa at certain countries. So
Mhm.
some of that stuff, but not the basic criteria. No, I don't see that. I don't see changes in that.
All right. I think that's a good thing, if not the basic things are being changed.
It is because it's a great way to come here, and they think, oh, it's $1,050,000. It's not. They get confused because EB5 is the 1,050,000. E2 is tiny, it's way tinier, and even though $100,000 is a lot of money for people where they make so little per year, 100,000 is a very big figure.
Yeah,
So, but it's not. You don't have to hit the 100,000 for an E2. You just has to be. It makes sense. What you've invested makes sense for what you need to run your business.
absolutely. And that's the main important thing that everyone is noticing.
Yeah.
All right. And okay, so here's another question from Ananya, that are some countries expected to benefit more than others from these changes? Okay. All right. Okay.
Well, see, there aren't a lot of changes taking place, except some of these. to not have to have the interview for the E2 visa, that it was
Mhm.
waived. So certain countries, then things would process a lot faster. So now, if they have to have interviews all the time, every time you want another E2 visa, certain countries, the E2 visa is not 5 years. Sometimes it's 6 months.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's 1 year. So you have to, every time you want to come to America, you can come in, you get your 2 year stay, but when you leave, if your visa is finished, you got to go get another visa. So some of these countries, they don't qualify for a waiver of the interview for the E2, it's going to get backlogged. Do I know all the countries this is going to happen to? No, I don't know precisely which ones, but it could cause some delay in some of these countries. But there's always expedite request. If you need it, if there's a real emergency, you can try to approach the consulate and ask for an expedite, and it's up to them.
Absolutely, I'm sure. All right, the contact details are on the, I would say, the end of this bar you can see. And with that, thank you so much, Ananya, for putting up this very important question. And let's take up Raghav's comment here. So, Raghav is asking about can you explain how the revised E2 visa requirements will impact the duration of the visa and the possibility of renewal or extension for investors?
Well, there aren't a lot of revised E2 visa requirements other than the waiver interview has changed. That just changed.
Mhm.
The impact of it, well, right now, some of these consulates, it's 2 or 3 months, right? They have to review the file. They take like 2 months to review it, and then they schedule you for the interview. So will it get worse? So then they could take longer. Some consulates could take 4 or 5 months, so it could cause a delay in that sense. In terms of it says extension. So extension's different because that's in the United States if you're extending the E2. So when you
Mhm.
extend the E2, what are any of the revised changes or anything? Well, again, if they're going to see that you have employees and there are very few Americans that you hired, they could come down tough and say, please explain your strategy for hiring more American workers. We'd like to hear it. So we don't know how that's going to filter in to the cases in the queue or the ones that are just going to get filed. What we do know is that if you have strong gross sales, usually if it's a small company, we see a couple $100,000 in gross sales. We see a net income with, even if it's 10,000, it's a positive net income. And we see over several, the financial statements look good. You should be okay. You should be okay for your extension. And we tell them, you got to work on it. I have clients that they have problems, that their financials don't look right, and it comes time for the E2 visa renewal. So what we tell them is, if you have a 5 year visa and you have, let's say, 6 months left on it, we tell them leave the country, re enter. That gives you another 2 years to stay here. Because every time you leave and re enter, you can stay another 2 years.
Yeah.
So the EU visa, although it's going to expire while you're in this country, you still
Mhm.
get to stay another 2 years, which gives you maybe another two tax returns possibly to fix the problem. Because if they can see that your most recent tax returns look good, then
Mhm.
that's what helps get you that extension or the renewal. And so that's what we tell them. We have to strategize sometimes so that they can have the strongest case. And sometimes we can't. Sometimes we just tell them it's a mess. Your E2 is a mess. You're not going to get a renewal or an extension. It's time to close up shop and do something else. And if we can transfer any of the assets and they start another E2, we try to help them with that too. Because we don't want to give them a dead end. We want to find a way for them to stay here. That's what they want. That's our goal. The worst thing an immigration lawyer has to do is say, I'm sorry, there's nothing I can do. Please leave. You have to leave the country. That's the worst. If we have to say that, it's like, it's so sad. I spend all day because I do all different types of cases, marriage cases, telling people, okay, you're getting married, congratulations. I have to tell a guy, fly to Vegas to get your marriage certificate faster than whatever. I tell people all the time, leave, stay, when are you getting married? Are you buying this business? These are critical things for people's lives, but we
Yeah.
do it because we want to make the best case for them.
Absolutely, that's beautiful. Thank you so much, Jessica. For putting these very important pointers, and that too in a very positive way. Our viewers are really filled with lots of positiveness, and because
It's
they
good.
learn about two visas, and
It's a
I'm
stressful time for me, so I'm glad that I can give that positive over because our field, I just attended an immigration conference last week. There were two classes on happiness. And I'm thinking, what do you need to give us happiness classes for? But our field is so stressful because we want to help everybody. And the Trump administration has so many laws and executive orders and things coming our way that we just have to digest it all and just try to do the best we can. We have
Mhm.
clients, yes, we have to tell them it's over. There's so many things going on right now in our field. But we try to give positive. Positive is that E2 is still a great way to come here. That's the positive.
That's great. All right. Thank you so much, Jessica, for putting that up. And Raghav, also, I hope you got your answer. In case if you still have any follow-up question, then please go ahead, and we are definitely going to answer that. Arpita is here. Arpita has another very good question. That what is the potential for increased scrutiny in E2 visa application due to the 2025 changes, and how can investors navigate these challenges?
So we are like a surgeon. We go at the case like everything that there is a gap or something that doesn't seem right, we're like, fill that gap in. Okay. So we start with, where did the money come from? Tell us all the sources. One
Mhm.
guy says, "Oh, I didn't have to pay taxes on it." I said, "Give me an accountant letter explaining why there was no taxes required, because immigration doesn't know your tax laws and how they work." Then the money's transferred. We show the proof of that transfer. We explain where it came from. We have them sign a detailed statement of the source of the funds. We deal with every issue of the E2 case as precisely like a surgeon as we can, so we can leave no gaps. And that is what we're doing more than ever. That's one of our bigger changes, is that we always filed strong cases. We did our best. But based on my experience and what I know now, when my clients give me feedback after interviews and things, you know, this is what we have to do now. We have to make it even more precise. We don't want a client coming back and saying, "We hired you, you had all this experience, and what happened?" We're like, "No, we're covering it." And even when a client pushes back and says, "I gave you enough stuff, why are you asking for more?" We tell them it's 2025. Trump's our president. We have to be even more precise. So that's what it's done. That's what 2025 will be more about. A lot more precision than what we do.
All right. All right. That's great. Okay, thank you, Arpita, for asking the question and participating in our webinar. Pooja is here with another question, that what are the most common challenges that investors face when applying for the E2 visa? And with the anticipated changes in 2025, do you foresee any new obstacles for applicants?
So obstacles is something that's negative. I want to say E2s are there's there's a path. There's a way to come here. There are great opportunities to come here. So I wouldn't say I foresee obstacles. I foresee opportunities. There really are opportunities. I mean, I have clients that search and search and search for businesses, can't find anything that exists, and they're like, "That's it, I'm creating my own." That's an opportunity. They're creating their own business. And then we talk about how being very precise of all the things that we need, and they have to get their funds in order, but sometimes they'll contact me like a year before they even start the E-2, because they just want to make contact with an immigration lawyer before they start the whole process. They want to understand, what are the challenges, what are some things I need to be aware of. Like, I'll have a client call me up and say, "Well, I have $100,000 and I gave it to my friend in the United States and he's going to put it into the business." And I'm like, "That's not how you do it. It has to be in your name, and the transfer has to be from you. You can't just give it to a friend for an E-2." So they'll call me if they made a mistake, and I'll be like, "You should have contacted me 6 months ago." I've had clients have to redo deals because they don't set them up right. I've
Mhm.
had a client that said, "Look, it's $1 million. I'm going to put 200,000 down. I'm going to do a seller carryback note for the other 800,000." I said, "Well, look, it's not really going to work, because substantial investment, they look at what it costs to run the business. But tell me about the business." So he says, "Well, it's really a building. I'm buying a building, and the active part of the business is really 200,000. 800,000 is the building." So I told him, "You know what? Break it up. Have a contract for the building, 800,000, and pay 200,000 and buy the active part of the business. That's your E2." And that's how we do it. Because otherwise it makes no sense. You can't really do not like you securing a loan from the business that you're buying, because they're afraid they give you the visa and then all of a sudden you're like, "Oh, company didn't work out, but oh, I still have the visa." They don't like that. So
Absolutely. And I think those are very important guidance that our viewers should really know about, because just for the sake of friendship, they are being into such a big obstacle. But I think that's not how it should work. So I'm sure that these pointers are really being going to helpful for them.
Sam,
So
I
yeah.
would just tell you one other thing also, that I feel like sometimes people are discouraged because they need it to fit into a precise box in order to work for an E2. But we don't do it that way. We look and we see what you've got and what you want to build and what's going on right now. We try to make it work if we can. We
Yeah.
try, because they bring us their dream businesses and we're like, if we can make it work, we'll try.
Mhm. All right. Okay. Let's move ahead with another question that I got from Vihan. Vihan is here asking what are the specific legal and financial risks that investors need to consider with the revised E2 visa guidelines in 2025, especially if the investment does not meet expected returns.
So on your business plan, you have the projections. In 6 months, what you're hoping to get from the business, in 1 year, 3 and 5 years. They do not lock you into those projections. Those are just rough estimates. So if you can't bring in what you thought you'd bring in, they're not looking at your case every year. Only when you do your E2 visa renewal or you do your extension of E2 status. And then they're not going to say, by the way, you said in year 3 you were going to make this kind of money. So what happened? Case denied. It's not
Mhm.
like that. Those are just projections. What's really important is they want to see, do you have enough money to pay your bills? And let's say you don't. Let's say 1 year you don't have enough money. So let's say you're a wealthy individual and you're going to put more of your money in to help the business grow. Well, you're going to have to explain that. If it comes time for the renewal or the E2 extension, you're going to have to explain, look, I had difficulty. It could be an industry that suffered, or you could have been, let's say it was a hurricane or something happened and it's explainable why your business suffered. Then you can explain that when you file your case. And usually with a valid explanation and to show the potential for growth that you're coming out of that rut, you should
Mhm.
be okay. So it's just very case specific. If there's really financial loss or risk and what happened, we have to explain it.
All right. Okay. I think let's take Trizer question here. And Trizer is asking that, hi, I have a business partner. We are in the process of starting an offshore IT and production studio. Now, during the E2 application, which should we focus on as a company works on both aspects?
So I will just wonder where this business is located. Okay. Because if it's offshore and they also have a production studio. So I'm
Mhm.
wondering if the production studio, I assume it's in the United States. So this is where we talk about how much time does the person physically as the investor need to be here. We want to make sure we build something here that they have to come and check on regularly. Otherwise, it becomes everything so remote it doesn't work. But the focus should be on the sales, the clients, the employees that they have. That's to build it up. That's what I would say, and make sure that there's enough activity going on in the U.S. It's not all offshore.
All right. Trizer, you could let us know from which location you would like to have a business on, so that we can give you a better advice on that. Next, I would like to go with Srujit's comment. Okay, and Trizer here also had a comment that your show popped up on my feed. Found it interesting.
I try.
Absolutely. It's really interesting. Okay, we are based in India.
Oh, India. Okay, yeah. So that's pretty far. Okay, so he just needs to the production studio. I assume it's in the U.S. That's why he's wanting to come here. And by the way, this is all about E2, but don't forget there's something called E1. So if he has a majority of the trade or services are between the US and their home country that they're providing, then that could be an E1. And majority means substantial means at least for 1 year, there's been trade or services. And substantial is usually 150, $200,000 in sales, but it could be anything. It could be services like IT services. It could
Mhm.
be trade, it could be a product that's made in, let's say, India, and they're selling it. Majority of their sales worldwide are with the United States, and they're substantial. That's E1. I didn't say anything about the amount of investment. There was no substantial investment. It is an easier way to come here actually than an E2, but you have to fit the box. It doesn't always fit for people. So it's out there though, E1. And we have to have a treaty, of course. So
That's right. All
hmm.
right, Trizer, I hope you got your answer. And in case if you still have any follow up, then please let us know. Meanwhile, Jessica, we also have some questions from our Facebook group as well, because there also we have a lots of viewers over there. So I think let's take some questions from there as well. So here's another question: that can we travel on B1, B2 if we have applied for EB2? Any issue in it?
Okay, so EB2, employment based, that's the second preference. um, so that's green card application. So B1, B2 is temporary. That's a way to come here as a business or a visitor. So the question is, what ties do you have in your home country? And when you're coming in as a visitor, does a officer who's seeing you when you enter America, does he, CBP, really believe you're going to return? So just having an application in the system doesn't mean you can't come in on a B1, B2. But if the officer sees it and feels you don't have enough ties to return to your home country, then they don't have to let you in. So we do entry packets. We put together a whole packet showing what your ties are there, what you're doing here, and then we prepare you. So hopefully you can get in because the process can take a lot of time. It can take several years before you actually get the green card.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, let's go ahead with the next question. Hi, I'm an E2 dependent spouse, currently pregnant, due on March. Will the birthright citizenship removal take effect that soon, or will it be on hold due to 22 state lawsuits contradicting it?
It's on hold. They're waiting right now. It's being litigated. So I don't know what's going to happen. We don't know if it'll take
Mhm.
effect. Yep, stay tuned. But anyway, March is pretty soon. So it's on hold. So having that baby in March, you know, it sounds like you'll be okay, but who knows what if the courts speed up the case or not. But yeah, we don't
Mhm.
know.
Absolutely. Let's see what comes at the end decision, and we all are hoping for the best. All right, let's move ahead with the next comment.
It's the same thing, the birthright issue, right? It's a problem. Non-immigrants who have kids born here, this
Mhm.
is what it's about. They don't want to give them citizenship. Trump doesn't want them to have automatic citizenship. So yes, they are affected by this if the rule goes into effect. And then there was going to be a procedure. There should be something in place of how they turn into an E2 dependent, right? Because if the kids were born here right now, they're probably not E2 dependents. So there has to
Mhm.
be some procedure in place to get them the proper paperwork.
That's right. Okay. I think we got this another question. And Control, if you could let us know about that question, please. Okay. I think we might have. Okay, I think Jessica, there might be some technical issue regarding the FB questions, but not to
Oh,
worry. We do have still a lot of questions, from our viewers. And okay, let's take up one or two questions lastly, and then okay, here we have Yash question. How will the 2025 E2 visa changes affect the ability of foreign investors to hire employees from abroad, especially from their home country? And are there additional steps they must take for this?
so I think that they're referring to the E2 qualifying employees, right? So you can be an essential worker, you can be a manager executive. So the criteria, again, everything will be scrutinized. We need to be more precise, but
Mm,
same criteria. You have to have the same citizenship as the E2 investor. You have to be coming here to work in a capacity as a manager executive or someone with specialized knowledge and skill. And you have to
mm,
show that you have that experience to do that. So, and then they issue you the visa. And depending on our treaty, how long that visa is valid for, and the dependent spouse can work
mhm.
while you're on your E2 qualifying employee visa. So, yeah, that's the process.
All right. Okay, next up, let's take up Kunal's question. Kunal is here asking, are there any new pathways or benefits for investors looking to transition from an E2 visa to a different permanent visa or green card options following the changes in 2025? Yeah.
It's a very interesting question because right now, the EB5 is the most popular way. And it was not the most popular way because it was such a long process. It was like 4 or 5 years. Now it's a 2 year process because if you're an E2 and you file the first part of your EB5, you can file the second part, which is called adjustment of status together, which means you
Mhm.
can apply for a work permit and travel document. The whole thing can be filed together. Some of these other categories, you can't do that. EB2, EB3, you can't do it all together if your priority date's not current, which it's not for these categories, but EB5 is for certain categories. So this is becoming popular. And what's also becoming popular is the regional centers. So regional center says you need to invest $800,000, not $1,050,000, and put your business anywhere you want. You invest in a regional center. So I asked one of my peers, I said, what if you don't have $800,000? And he says, you would be surprised that people either take equity from their house, they have relatives that are wealthy, they are gifted money from friends or whatever, and they make it happen because they want that EB5. And this right now, we see that EB5 is getting very popular. And
Yeah.
I used to say EB3 was the way to go, but it's backlogged. And EB5 really is, even though it's a 2 year conditional green card you get, if you've invested the money, the regional center helps you create the required jobs, and then you have to remove the conditional status after 2 years. But people are doing it. They're finding ways to get that money. But that's what I see for 2025. EB5 is very popular.
Absolutely. That too. Thank you so much, Jessica, for taking all these questions very patiently and answering them in a very detailed way. So, again, I would say thank you so much. It's really appreciating. And I think, Jessica, we already crossed 1 hour. So, with your
Sure.
permission, I would just like to know, would you like to answer more questions, or should we put an end to it?
I think a lot of the questions are a little bit similar, like because they want to know in 2025 what are the changes, how will it impact them, and I think we addressed a lot of them. So I
Yeah,
think that's good. I just want to share one other thing that I offer a free brief consult so people know to anyone who is thinking about doing an E2. It's usually 10 minutes or so, but it gives them a little bit of direction because a lot of lawyers just they get on the, they're going to have a consult, charge right away. But a lot of people just want to get some of the foundation. And also my website is very helpful. I made charts talk about the E2 process along with other processes, and it shows the steps and stuff involved in the requirements. And I think that's really helpful too. So if people are thinking about, okay, this E2 sounds interesting, that's where I would start. And they can always reach out to me. But I think for now the questions, because they're all a lot similar questions, that I think we've addressed like what changes 2025 and how concerns and any financial concerns. And they just have to like find that right business and just call an immigration lawyer or me and you know just get started.
of course, they will, because I can see a lot of questions here, on our webinar, and because viewers are really loving this episode and they are having a lots of queries regarding that. But don't worry, friends, keep on posting as many questions as possible. We are definitely going to take them up, maybe if not in this session, in our next session. But with that, Jessica, thank you so much. We have come across 1 hour. We didn't even realize. So it was your first time with us, and it's not only me who enjoyed. I think everyone enjoyed this session a lot. So we are really honored that you are here. Thank you so much for taking up this time and investing it here. So we really enjoyed, and thank you so much for being here.
And thank you so much as well, because I love educating people, and without education, you cannot make the decisions. So that's what I do. I give you all the information, and the client makes the decision what's the best for their family and their lives. So thank you very much.
That's lovely. We love the energy that you bring us in this show, and also the insights were that too very helpful and wonderful, I would say. So again, thank you so much, Jessica, for being here, and we are looking forward to have more shows with you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here and asking a lot of questions. I'm sure if you guys are not very much happy that we didn't take your question, but don't worry. We have asked all the questions, and in the next show we are definitely going to take them up. So till then, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Immigration Talk Show. We'll be coming up with very exciting webinar, and that will be lined up just for you. So make sure to press the bell icon also, so that you can get notification whenever we come live. Until then, everyone, take care. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Our handle is at Immigration Talk Show. It's me, Sam, signing off for now. Goodbye, everyone, and take care.